Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to react to 90 Day Fiancé. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and I'm also a professor and I'm now a YouTuber. Let's get to the show.
And I live with my boyfriend and I live with him parents. Parents all the time say I'm bad girl. Him nice boy.
Interesting that she is in the same situation twice. That's interesting. I wonder if that's just coincidence.
I leave because this is make me crazy. Start mother love me, but next she hear how I yell at him, and of course she hate me because he have problem and she try yell at me.
Interesting. So I hadn't considered this, but I'm considering it now, which is that Julia has something in her relational history, trauma-wise or difficulty-wise or complex-wise, that leads her to be attracted to people like Brandon because she is describing their future. What she had in the past, I'm quite sure is going to happen with Brandon and Betty. That Betty is going to not that Julia is going to ramp up her yelling at Brandon. The mom is going to hate her, and it's going to, explode. So isn't it interesting that Julia has twice now been attracted to a person like Brandon? And I would wonder what that was. And that's one of the main things of psychodynamic therapy is looking back on our relationships and looking for themes. And one of the themes that we look for are the sort of person that we're attracted to. And sometimes it illuminates certain relational traumas or reenactments that we will engage in, or complexes or projective identification. Listen to all my episodes on projective identification and psychodynamic therapy. It's all in there. But, well, if I was to just briefly talk about one thing. So when we're young, when we're 0 to 5, we will internalize the relationships that we're in. And one way of looking at it is we internalize not only the other person, but we also internalize how we view the self. So you're 4 years old and you have a depressed parent. Let's say your mother is very depressed and she's kind of blank and she sleeps all the time and she's just not around. And as a child, you're frequently trying to get her to pay attention to you. You're trying to get her to do things, but she's just not available. And that is very painful to you. Some of you might be able to relate to this. And you internalize that relationship. And this is all just one particular path that one particular person would take. But you internalize the parent. You don't internalize the parent as a depressed parent, because at 4, you don't know what depression is. What you internalize is a blank parent, maybe, if that's how it's perceived by the ego. You internalize this blank, ghost-like figure that you are grasping for and isn't really there. And then you also observe the self. You observe the self as grasping and hurt and angry and neglected. And you internalize that relationship dyad, and we have a representation in our ego, in our personality, that represents that relationship. We observe the other and we observe the self and we observe how those two are interacting. And so over time, if that happens over and over again, if your mother is depressed and just you're trying to get her and she's just always out of reach, and this introject or this internalization becomes stronger and stronger and stronger and a bigger part of your personality, and it causes all sorts of problems because it's a negative introject. As you grow up and maybe you move out of the house, you still have this representation in your personality, and it will produce a lot of bad things. One of the it's very complicated, but one of the bad things that it will produce is this notion of you don't matter, because that's what it feels like. You're grasping for your parent and your parent isn't there, and you start to conclude, I don't matter. So I have this ghost other and grasping self that doesn't matter. And when I'm not involved with other people, I have this nagging feeling like I don't matter, no one loves me, I don't deserve people's attention, all these kinds of notions. And so it's very difficult, causes a lot of problems. There's a lot of other ways it manifests, but that's one. The other way is that we look to recreate this relationship. We look to recreate it. And through projective identification, we either project one side or the other. So remember, there are two sides. There was the ghost mother and the neglected self. So we'll either seek a person that emulates the ghost, and then we will feel neglected and angry and that we don't matter. Or we will project the self onto someone else, and we will identify with our mother. So we will become the ghost, and I'll find someone that's angry at me for being a ghost, that kind of thing. I'm simplifying it, but this is essentially how it works. And we see these patterns in people, and people tend to project one side onto other people in their relationship patterns. And so I don't know, but there's a billion different possibilities. It's possible that for Julia, she has something like that in her history. Some ghost-like figure, some passive, neglectful person in her past that made her feel neglected and targeted and alone and grasping. And she is recreated by her need to, so we have this need to externalize this internalization. If it's left internal, it causes a lot of turmoil. And when we externalize it, where one person possesses the other side and we possess the other side, it still feels bad because there's this bad relationship happening, but it's not happening in our mind. And it's distracting because it's happening outside. It's a fantasy that it's happening outside. It's still happening on the inside, but if I make it on the outside, then it feels more handleable. It's also comfortable because it's the way you grew up with things, and so you tend to think, well, this is just how life is, and I feel comfortable. And if someone isn't a ghost with me, I actually feel a little uncomfortable with that because it doesn't match my representation of love and attachment, and that has to do with attachment and working models and all that stuff. But anyway, the point is that people will tend to do this, and I wonder if there's something in Julia's past that causes her to seek out what I'm calling ghostly others, people who are passive, people who don't know who they are, people who make you feel like you don't matter, people who don't assert themselves, that aren't really in the relationship for one reason or another, that continually make you feel a certain way. For yourself, if we're always going to use this as a jumping off point, a worthy exercise in therapy is to think about the emotional themes that you have in your relationships, particularly romantic relationships, and to look backwards to our childhood to imagine, okay, what am I recreating? If you are attracted to bad people, like people who aren't good for you, continually, like I'm always attracted to, this sort of person. Well, a good thing to do in therapy is to investigate what you're trying to recreate and why you're trying to recreate it. And through psychodynamic therapy, interpersonal therapy, you can actually heal from those past issues such that you don't need to recreate it anymore. And you can break free of the chains of projective identification and actually interface with people on a real level, on a way that is uncomplicated by your need to recreate the past. I hope that makes sense. Let me know in the comments if that makes any sense, because it's been a while since I've talked about that, and it's a little complicated. But let me know what you think in the comments.
Ex-boyfriend don't care about all. I say, look, we have problem. Him not believe me. And now, repeat situation. I'm first in your life. I'm not second. I'm stay here. I'm first. You ask me first. You tell me first. You call me first. I'm first for you.
So you just see the look on his face. He is being told, hey, you are going to make me first. All right, that's a preference that you have, Julia, which makes total sense. But you can't force someone to make you first. What Julia should say, or if I was a therapist, I would say, Julia, I hear you. Hey, Brandon, she is asking you to make her first. She wants you to make her first. How do you feel about that? What do you want? Because maybe he doesn't want to make her first. It's not a good move given the scenario, but he needs to state what he wants. But you just saw his face. He was just like, I think he's very used to being yelled at and being told what to do, and used to just giving that face of like, oh, okay. Even though he might not want to do it. Or he doesn't even know what he wants, and he knows that if he commits to something, then that will set him up for disappointing people even more. I don't know. But let's rewind that and just look at his face. It seems like there's nothing there in terms of his own wants.
My mother loves Julia, and even though she has a ton of rules, she still has our best interest at heart. But I'm a little nervous that I'm putting Julia in the same situation. I can't control my mother. I can't control how they will interact. They both have really strong personalities, and I just feel like they're gonna clash.
Yeah, but unless you state what you want, then both of them believe you are on their side. And so both of them will believe they have the right to clash with the other person. And so by being a ghost with these two people, you are basically making them hate each other. That's what's happening as far as I can tell.
Maybe mother don't understand this because you baby now. I think she soon like say, Brendan, come here, and you need sleep. And she not give you
Never change.
Free choice, free life. But you soon married.
So this is actually really troublesome to me, that Julia wants what she wants, and I think most people would identify with Julia in the situation here, that her wants make sense. And it's tempting to believe from Julia's perspective of, well, of course he wants what I want because we're both adults, and he of course wants the same things that I do. He wants to move out of the house. He wants to tell his mom to back off. He wants to sleep with me in the room even though the mom doesn't want him to. We're on the same page here. It's tempting to believe that. But we have heard nothing from Brandon that indicates that. It's possible that he doesn't want that, or he doesn't know what he wants. And the troubling part of this is that if Julia assumes something that isn't true, she could have a rude awakening in front of her, where she suddenly realizes, oh, I've been assuming that you wanted these things too. But actually, when I think about it, you've never indicated that you wanted these things. Do you want these things? Do you want the things that I want? So I'm really worried about that.
All people after marry need be number one for each other. I need be first for him. He needs to care about me first, and next take care about parents.
So you hear that phrasing? He needs to care about me. He needs to put me first. Instead of, I wonder how he feels. Now, there's nothing wrong with her saying, I want him to put me first. I want him to care about me, of course. But what if he doesn't? At that point, do you say, you have to care about me? You have to put me first? That's just like what his mom does to him. And when you are a ghost, you tend to evoke that from other people. When you have no personality that you're putting forth, no wants, you don't know what you want, you're so passive, it will suck people in to control you because they will invent in their mind, well, I know what's best for them. I can tell what they want. And this could end up being very, very difficult to watch, actually. Let's continue watching.
I say we need to fix this problem very quickly. We have last night together?
Tomorrow it's gonna be toiling in the fields.
Yeah, so previous to this episode, I was under the impression, and maybe they're editing it this way, but I was under the impression that Brandon and Julia were much more simpatico. They were much more aligned with their values and what they wanted. After today's episode, it's unclear. I'm unclear what Brandon wants. I'm unclear if Brandon actually is on the same page of Julia. He's clearly not on the same page with the mom, but I wonder if he even knows how to be on someone's page. So I'm really, really worried. If you didn't know this already, I actually have a podcast that you can subscribe to on your phone. Go to a podcast application and subscribe to Psychology in Seattle. We have 3 episodes every week in which we talk about various different things. If you're interested, you can subscribe and listen on your earbuds when you're doing laundry or driving to work or something. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.